Hello, everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast, coming to you as always from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes of the Galactic Empire. My name is John Mark Tolley. As I take a sip of my tea, uh, joining me today, as always, is my co-host, the one, the only, the magnanimous Darth Tuba.
Wow, bright suns, everybody.
I know.
I've never been called that.
I,
Nice.
I just like using big words.
Well, you do it very well. How are you doing tonight, John Mark? You doing all right?
I'm doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. Today had the day off, so I just kind of.
That is always a nice thing.
Got some yard work done. Got the dog washed, and yeah, that's about it.
Hey, you know what?
Watch some TV. Honestly, I've been not been watching Star Wars recently. I started watching Stargate Sg1 again.
Wow! All right.
I started watching, kicking it old school.
Backing it to the 90s or whatever that was. That's
early 2000s, actually.
Early 2000s. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm not a Stargate. I'm not a gate guy. I don't know that one as well.
Yeah.
But in tying into tonight's topic, have you been watching the Marvel What If?
I have been. That's kind of what gave me the idea for doing this, is watching the What Ifs.
I did just briefly. I didn't see today's at the day of as we recorded on Wednesday. I haven't seen today's episode, but I have to say I've really enjoyed them. I thought it's very well done. It's nice when they can bring back all the original MCU actors to do the voices.
That's one thing that's really cool.
It gives it a real nice credibility. Otherwise, it's basically like watching the Marvel cartoon show, like that they run.
I didn't watch I haven't seen the new one. I haven't seen the last one just because I'm not a big zombie guy.
Yeah, me neither.
So I'm just kind of like but yeah, so we are live on YouTube if you want to check us out there right now. Say hi to us. Looks like we got one person out there.
Okay. Hello.
So, hello out there, whoever you are.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Before we get started, also just want to remind everyone that War of the Stars is a part of the Red 5 Network. Check out red5network.com for all information on all the shows on the Red 5 Network.
Red 5 standing by. That's awesome.
That's right.
Great name.
Love it.
All right.
So what if? Why don't you start us out? What kind of what if scenario would you like to kind of touch on and look at?
Well, it's funny because before I get to that, when we talk about what if, obviously we're thinking about in the most recent Marvel What If, as we just mentioned. But I'm always brought back to the Star Wars Infinities comics that came out.
Yes.
And they're basically Star Wars what ifs, if you think about it. But they're basically just, they took basically 3 stories, one from Star Wars Empire and Jedi, and they basically changed one thing. What if this happened instead? So that it's hard for me not to go in that way. I know this is a more open palette, but if I were going to start, I think I'm going to start with episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I'm going to go into this universe, and I'm going to say, what if Qui-Gon, spoiler alert, didn't die? What if Qui-Gon was able to survive his encounter with Darth Maul, and where would that go from there? And we got to imagine that. Keep in mind, Obi-Wan was, he just thought of Anakin as a pathetic life form. And that was pretty much it. And he was just kind of tagging along for the ride for the rest of the movie. And it was only after Qui-Gon was struck down and he, his dying wish was to have Obi-Wan train him, that Obi-Wan, agreed reluctantly, but, to honor his master. So what if that never happened? Qui-Gon is alive and well. He is the whole, and everything else in episode 1 turned out the way it did, the way we know it.
Except for Qui-Gon lives.
Except Qui-Gon lives.
Where does that go? Because then you're into the question of not necessarily nurture versus nature, but you're into the question of, oh, hello, Red 5 Network.
Hey, Red 5 Network. Woohoo!
You're into the question of, was Anakin's turn the will of the Force? Was that something that was basically into predestination? Was Anakin predestined to fall? No matter what, that was his ultimate goal, because that's the will. That was the will of the Force, to bring balance.
However,
yeah,
I would say that, okay, in my head canon, Qui-Gon lives. Obi-Wan no longer is, connected, if you will, to Anakin Skywalker. Okay, unless of course Qui-Gon, meets his end, meets his fate somewhere along the line later on, and Obi-Wan takes on the mantle. But let's say that doesn't happen. Let's say Qui-Gon lives.
Yeah.
A normal human in the Star Wars universe's lifespan, and which is well beyond where he is, old enough to live to see Anakin grow to be an adult. It would be very interesting. I want to see that training. I want to see how Qui-Gon, who's in his own way a rogue Jedi, when you think about it, he talks about the living Force, and he doesn't mind challenging the Council, and how he would act as a mentor to Anakin, and how he would handle Anakin, who dealing with the being cold and attachments and everything else.
Yeah.
But keep in mind that Anakin's first loss was Qui-Gon originally.
Yeah. True.
Now I think he doesn't have that, so be curious.
I think you would have a much more, because I think the relationship, when you look at the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, it was very much older brother, younger brother.
Yes.
Because they were much closer in age. There was still a big age gap, but they were still much closer in age than you had with Qui-Gon and Anakin. So I think that relationship would be much more father-son.
Yes.
Than it was with Anakin. I think that was the problem. One of the problems you had with the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan is Anakin wanted that father figure. He wanted that strong, and that's why he was so drawn to Palpatine, because Palpatine gave him that.
Right. And
I think a twisted way.
Right.
It was twisted way, but he gave him that. He gave him the one thing that Obi-Wan wouldn't, and possibly even couldn't give him, was that father figure.
But I also think that Qui-Gon would have filled that role, so that Palpatine would have been able
to.
And I think that now then it raises the next question of how would the whole relationship in what now we know is Episode 2, how would that unfold with Count Dooku, who was the mentor or master of Qui-Gon Jinn. How would that have worked? Like Qui-Gon was, Count Dooku was making a good talk of like, he knew the corruption as well as I did, but he would never gone along if he knew how bad it was. And it's like, do you really know that? I mean, do you think that Qui-Gon? Yes, I could see him being a rebel, being a rogue Jedi to a point, but not a dark Jedi, not someone who would walk away from the Order, but just trying to be part of the living Force. And I don't know. I would be very curious to see where that would go. I think that his existence could have changed the whole fate. I think that he could have been the father figure for Anakin. He could have seen right through Qui-Gon. He is Qui-Gon. He could have seen right through Count Dooku, and maybe avoided those traps early. I'm not saying it would have definitely happened, but I think that it very well could have happened.
But again, when we're dealing with Palpatine, we're dealing with someone who had, the old saying of a wheel within a wheel within a wheel within a wheel.
Right.
Yeah, that's how, he would have had plan Triple Z ready to go if he couldn't have got, Anakin.
Right. So, I mean, but I would have liked to have seen a story, or I'd love to see a what if story where Qui-Gon lives and how that affects the overall universe and the whole Anakin. Does Anakin turn to the dark side? Does Anakin not turn to the dark side? Does Anakin eventually end up taking out Palpatine? Does Qui-Gon fight Palpatine?
Yeah.
Does Qui-Gon fight Count Dooku? I mean, there's so many interesting things.
Oh yeah, there is.
And don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not a prequel hater in any way. I thought the prequels were great. I liked the story. I liked that they had to stick to Obi-Wan teaching Anakin because that was part of the original story. Hey, extra techie. Hey, Warren.
Hello.
Hey, guys. So I think that that would have been a very. It just would have been an interesting direction to go in. But again, they were kind of stuck with where they went, and I liked what they did, and I liked that Obi-Wan was the reluctant teacher at first.
Yeah,
and then you're right. It was like an older, younger brother sibling kind of thing, which included almost a sibling rivalry. So,
I mean, you had to go that way almost because to get to the end game of the story for the prequels, which was obviously
he's jealous.
The rise of Darth Vader.
He's holding me back.
Yeah,
you gotta have
you
your
had
whiny.
to have all these things fall into place.
Qui-Gon would not have handled. We would not have allowed a whiny Anakin.
And he probably would have put the kibosh on the relationship between him and Padme.
Oh yeah,
pretty quick.
That, which could have, if he had done that though, if he had tried to do that, it could have done. I mean,
I think he would have handled it differently. Like, there's one situation where you see, you can really see the difference between how I think, not Anakin, Qui-Gon would have handled Anakin and how Obi-Wan handled. It was that first encounter in Episode 2,
right,
when Anakin and Obi-Wan are talking with Padme, and he makes a quip. I can't remember what the quip is, but Anakin makes a quip, and basically Obi-Wan puts him in his place right then and there.
Yeah,
and just puts him down. And I feel that while I still think he would have let him know, okay, that's not the right thing to do. That's not your place. I think Qui-Gon would have handled it much more delicately and not led to, try not to embarrass him in front. He would have taken him aside and said, okay, next time, this is how we handle things.
Right.
Remember, you're the Padawan, I'm the master.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. All right, why don't you give us one? Give us a what if?
All right. Well, in this kind of the same vein, what if it had been what if Obi-Wan had died in Episode 2?
Oh, okay. So, are we saying specifically like at the end, like he died in the battle, or does it matter? Like,
it doesn't matter. At any point. Any point.
At any point. What if? Okay. Well, let's see here. Well, I think that, obviously Anakin would have. I think Anakin's fall to the dark side would have gone on much faster.
Yeah. Because
he wouldn't have even had Obi-Wan to fight him to try to keep him on one path. Anakin was all about attachment. We could not understand that. He lost his mother. He said goodbye to his mother, rather. So he was too. That's why they say they identify the Jedi, the strong children in the Force. They identify them young as infants, and they take them away so that they can teach them from the get-go not to form attachments. But he had already done that in and all sorts of attachments. There was his Padme, there was his love of pod racing, there was his C-3PO. He was just making attachments left and right. And then what happens is that they slowly start to go away. He loses Padme once. Then when he gets older, he gets dreams about her being kidnapped by the Tuscans, loses her again for real, for good. And then he dreams about losing Padme, and then you have the whole thing with Ahsoka, like with the Clone Wars, that he lost her. So losing all these attachments, spiraled him downward more and more. So if he had lost Obi-Wan, if he had lost at that point, Episode 2, this is 10 years later, his master, his only kind of relative and friend that he could really, and his confidant, and he wasn't with Padme yet until later in that movie or later in that story.
Yeah.
So if he lost Obi-Wan at any time in that story, that would have been devastating. Now he might have gone driven into the arms of Padme like faster, and Padme might have sympathized with him and kind of fallen for him faster. And the two of them might have even they might have just dropped everything and gotten married. And maybe that would have been okay. Maybe that would have been Anakin and Padme running off to some lake country in Naboo, and Anakin would not have the maturity or the guidance unless another Jedi kind of took over his training.
Yeah.
He could walk away from everything, which might have been better for the universe had he done that. Unless he could, the lure of power from Palpatine would have been too great, and if Palpatine was responsible for him doing the planting the dreams of Padme's death in his mind, and if Palpatine was indeed responsible for that, as some theorists say he would have been, then he could have still done that, and it would have still been the same thing. So I don't know how much different it would have been when you think about it, except that it might have gone faster.
Definitely. Well, let's just keep going with these and see what else we can come up with. You guys out there in the chat, if you have any what if scenarios you'd like us to kind of mule on, I don't know if that's even a word, but
mule on, okay,
whatever, chew on,
right.
To think about and consider. I think I may have just made up a word.
I'm gonna do one that's kind of weird because it's sort of what it's not a what if that I created. It's a what if that sort of happened in legend and maybe in some comics or books, but I want to talk about it. So it's a little bit of maybe a slightly go with me here.
Okay,
but And I want to preface this in watching the movie Solo. We've talked about all the movies.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed Solo. I really enjoyed the way they formulated a friendship. I'm speaking Han and Chewie, and but anybody who has read a lot of the expanded universe, now Legends, early on in comics and whatnot, might know that Han met Chewie basically as an Imperial pilot, and he freed Chewie as one of the slaves. I want to just back that up a minute and say, in the movie, what they did, the story goes that he was in flight training and he got booted for having a mind of his own, which I think kind of goes along the same line as that Legend story. But what if Han had become an Imperial pilot? Forgetting about the comics and everything, what if Han Solo went all the way to the academy and graduated top of his class and became an Imperial pilot? First of all, do you think he would have even made? I mean, it's so hard to imagine the swagger of Han Solo. It's so hard to imagine him even making it that far. But let's say he did.
I think he would have. I mean, I think eventually he would have. Just knowing from what we've heard of Han, he'd be flying a TIE Defender.
A TIE Defender. Okay. I like it. I mean, yeah.
I can also see him following the path of like a Wedge Antilles or something like, or he eventually will find his way to the rebellion just because that's who he is. I think no matter what, Han is always going to find his way to the rebellion just because of his personality and the way he is. He's gonna see something and that's not gonna sit right with him. And I don't see him ever being the loyal, super loyal Imperial soldier.
Well, that's the thing. Like I would say that, not only, I mean, that's why I kind of like the way the story played out in that he didn't even make it through training because he couldn't deal with that. He couldn't deal with that. And I don't see a scenario where Han Solo gets all the way through the academy, graduates, and is now a pilot of a TIE Defender or any other type of Imperial starship or fighter, and then all of a sudden, wakes up and says this is wrong, and like doesn't. And that's kind of what they were doing in the comics. Like he went into there was something I forget the details of it, but it was like he finds he lands this TIE fighter and he on a slave ship, and he sees a whole bunch of Wookiees that are captured, and he gets orders from his commander to, I don't know, kill them or do something, and he refused. He refused to do it, and I just thought that that's not Han. Han would never even gotten himself in that place to begin with, which is why he spent his life on the streets of Corellia. He would have been a smuggler. He would have been a grifter. He would have been that kind of a guy that with a heart of gold.
I could see that more, which leads me into my what if, which is something similar to what if Luke had made it to the Academy.
I was hoping you'd pick up on that.
I could see that what you just said be similar to Luke's journey, but I could see it being a little bit slower, where he slowly starts to question things that are going on. It's like at first he might make a few drive by. Good night. A few excuses. Like he's like, well, we're not really, he's like, well, they're not doing that bad of things, but then slowly he would see, what's really going on. But
it's funny you should mention that what if scenario, because if you've seen any information about the Lego Star Wars Halloween special. Now, again, Lego Star Wars has been around for years, for 20-something years, and Lego having animated Star Wars shows is something we've talked about in our animation special, but they're not canon, obviously, but they are a lot of fun. And I do believe, they showed a trailer for the Lego Star Wars Terrifying Tales, which comes out October 1st, so it comes out in 2 weeks. And one of them looks like, it's hard to piece, that they do so many quick cuts, but I said Lego extra techy. Yes, I did. What I felt was interesting was that it looked as though they were telling these kind of ghost stories in Star Wars lore, but one of them was they seemed like they might be their own version of What If. And I think Luke ends up in the Academy. So I'd be very curious, and it's hard to gauge how that. Of course, they're just going to have fun with it, but I would imagine that Luke would. I think he would go through. But I think a lot of people, I think he would have just followed Biggs. I think he would have gone through it and then jumped ship when he first got a chance. As soon as he knew, because by the way, have you? Sidebar here for a second. Have you? I think you did. Have you listened to the Star Wars radio drama?
It's been a long time, but
okay.
I kind of know. I've seen the deleted scenes that they had in the original 1977 New Hope with Biggs, where they're at Tashi Station. Yeah.
Well, first of all, to anybody listening, if you want the ultimate what if, like an actual what if, the Star Wars radio drama, specifically the first one. The second and third, the Empire and Jedi, were very good, but the Star Wars one is epic. It's 13 half-hour episodes, okay? And I'm telling you, you're not even getting to the story that we all know until like episode 3. There's all this lead-in that goes up to. You touch on some stuff, but there's all this lead-in of all of these things you're on Alderaan with Leia and her father at the time. You don't know that she's adopted, and so some Imperials that are visiting, and oh my God, I don't want to give it away, but there's a ton of what if there. There's like all of these different things that happen, and one of them does talk about Biggs when Biggs talks to Luke on that deleted scene. That they did shoot for the movie, but they didn't release, except as a deleted scene. And he said that he's going to, he graduated from the Academy, and he's going to jump ship and join the rebellion. And Luke was saying, you don't even know where to look for them. Then I'll do what I can on my own until we find them. It's like you don't stop to think that it's like a terrorist cell. They're all hidden.
They're everywhere. Yeah,
Right.
you have to know who to. Yeah, I mean, I think that with going to the academy,
right.
people always ask, well, why didn't you go to the Imperial Academy? That's because that was basically the only college that there was. If you wanted to go anywhere in the galaxy to be anything, you had to go through the academy.
Right. Well, it's like even now, like so many people join the army out of high school, because or one of the other branches, So
well, they make it seem like the Imperial Academy isn't necessarily just a military academy,
right?
Like it's something that if you want to get a good job,
see the world, or see the galaxy.
Well, not even that, but if you want to get a good job off, somewhere,
you want to get off.
You have that. You have to get that Imperial. You have to have that degree from the academy.
Right. So, yeah, but I do think Luke would follow Biggs. He would go. In fact, I think he would find Biggs.
Yeah.
And maybe the two of them would have, maybe Biggs would have fared better if Luke had joined the rebellion from a different vantage point. But you never know. Without Luke, right away, they could that Death Star could have done its deed. So, speaking of that, let's talk about Death Star. Okay. I'm gonna bring up. Let's go to Return of the Jedi. Okay. And what if so we had our second Death Star. What if they won? What if the Empire won? And that specific battle. Now, how do I mean? Okay. Well, let's consider everything. Starting on the planet, you've got, you got Han and Leia and Chewie and the droids, and they're down there with their rebel, their rebel guys, and not too many of them, and an entire legion of the Emperor's troops are there. Yeah. And let's say the Ewoks, were not able to be successful, and the Empire take them all out, and either imprisons our heroes or kills them outright. So and the shield stays up, and Luke is on the Death Star, and let's say that he's just watching, and like the Emperor was taunting him, "See for yourself," and then they were just shooting lasers out of the fully armed and operational battle station, and they literally just took out every single ship. Because I always thought, there weren't that many big ships. At least I didn't see that many go into hyperspace. That really cool scene where they all go together. And I didn't see too many. I mean, there were some.
So are we looking, we're looking at the Empire winning, are we looking at Palpatine still surviving? Or does the fight on the Death Star still turn out the same? Because I think that would really, answer a lot of questions as to how things go from there. Because if the Emperor, if things on the Death Star in the throne room still turn out the same, you still have the duel between Luke and Vader, and the Emperor, still tries to kill Luke, and Vader still helps and throws him down the shaft and kills him. Well, now you have a emperorless empire. You have a ship without anyone really at the rudder. You have a rudderless ship.
True. But here's the thing: if everything happened the way it did, and Vader would still die after killing the Emperor, he would still die himself. Yeah. But now you don't have a Death Star that is breaking apart in pieces and getting ready to blow itself up. Yeah. And instead, you have Luke. It's not like he can drag Vader around. It's not like he's dragging Vader in the middle of a fully functioning Death Star. I don't think it would have lasted. He would have been either taken away. Somebody would jump inside. Somebody would. There's always a joke. Like I think a Robot Chicken did a thing where, from the Imperial point of view, when the Emperor died and the Death Star blew up, and they were all like, "Okay, that's it. I guess we lose." And the other guy was like, "But wait, we have thousands of ships. Why don't we just turn on them?" Like, no. We have no Emperor. We have no Death Star. We've lost. Let's just turn ourselves in, you know. And it's like, well, that's a good point. I mean, they had a ton of ships there.
Yeah.
I mean, why not just, you know, but again, maybe without the Emperor's leadership.
And they explain that if you've read, this is Legends, they explain that the
heir to the Empire, an heir to the Empire, right?
That
which is why they
used
were going,
the Force to kind of connect everything, and once that kind of Force connection was kind of severed, that left everyone kind of in a limbo as to what to do and what, you know, where to go.
Yeah.
And that's why everything fell apart so quickly.
So, but the biggest thing but you also got to remember that it wasn't just that the Emperor died, it was the Emperor died and there was no Death Star. Their primary weapon was taken out, and now they still have it. So
well, I think what would happen in that case, you know, say the Death Star is still around, and I think this could be even more dangerous for the Star Wars galaxy as a whole, is I think you have an internal struggle within the Empire. I think you have the Empire break down into warlords and everyone trying to get control of that Death Star.
All those grand moffs. All those moffs like showing up.
All those moffs be fighting. You'll have, you know, what's left of the rebellion, because there'll still be pockets that will still be out there trying to fight the good fight. That will be trying to get control of it. So yeah, I think, you know, things just break down into complete chaos until someone like, say, Thrawn comes along and can take control.
There you go. I think you're right, and I think that, and again, you know, if we want to take
now let's look at the other situation. What if the Emperor lives?
Right, and Luke gets killed.
Vader
stays at
stays loyal.
Side. I think that you are looking at, I mean, a full-on retreat from. First of all, I think that the rebels would retreat as soon as they realized, if they got any word from down below in the planet that their team was captured.
Yeah.
If they had known that, then they would have just retreated, because there's nothing you can do. And whoever was left, and then, you know, maybe the Empire would pursue, maybe take out a few more of the big ships, and they would have reduced. It would almost have been like how Last Jedi ended, with the resistance being reduced to just a handful of people that could fit on the Falcon. And I think that would very well be what would happen. But I do believe that people would stand up, just like they did in Rise of Skywalker. I do believe that the people of the universe would no longer stand for it, and they would just just need a beacon to kind of say, okay, we're making our stand here. And
I do think certain worlds will be targeted. I think Mon Cal definitely. I mean, considering that the bulk of the Rebel fleet were Mon Cal cruisers,
right? Yeah, that would definitely.
I think that would be target number one for Death Star 2 once it was fully completed. Would be Mon Cal and Sullust.
Yeah. No, I definitely see that. So, and I do think, you know, the rebellion would regroup and make other attempts, and I think that there would definitely be an uprising eventually. You know, tyranny never can last forever. There's always going to be someone's going to step up, and someone will be successful. But so let's move on. Let's do some sequel trilogy stuff. Let's say let's go with we talked about, what if Qui-Gon lived? What if Han Solo lived? What if Han, you know, and let's say now let's do this more specifically. Let's say that Han was, I believe very strongly that you know, a lot of people theorize in the story as it unfolded, that Han Solo knew his son would never, he was not ready to come back home.
Yeah.
But that he had to go out onto that ledge and help him to achieve what he felt was the next step in joining the dark side, which would to be to end his father's life. So he was going out there on a suicide mission. Han was, knowing that this would be the step in the direction that he needed Ben to take, so that the deed split him in half. You know, it formed, you know, it formed a tear in his psyche as to whether being right or wrong, and how he was able to eventually overcome it and redeem himself. So but let's say Han, did the knee-jerk reaction Han thing that he might have done and say, self-preservation is a little more important. If you run away, you live to try this again another day. And what do you think would have happened? So let's say he goes out there, they set the charges, he sees Kylo run, walk across the chasm, and he decides not to engage. And instead, he and Chewie finish their job, and they set the charges. And then at that point, you see Rey and Finn. They're up top. There really would just be a matter of saying, "Okay, guys, we did it. We set the charges. Let's launch it." And then they would meet out by the Falcon, and they would take off. And then because if you remember how the story went out, blowing up that area was enough to get to penetrate the area. What is it? The oscillator, so that Poe could get in there and do it. So that would have happened regardless. And they would have flown back, and they would have headed back to wherever the resistance base was, and the thing would have got blown up. Kylo would not have gotten shot, nor would he have gotten injured, nor would have Finn. So they would have all gone their separate ways, probably gotten off planet without any issue. And I think that this would have just made the next story, The Last Jedi, whatever would happen there, would now be, I bet you Han would have gone with Rey to go find Luke. And I think that could have changed that whole story.
Oh, yeah.
Where he would have just said, come on, kid, slap him across the head and say, stop being a whiny, what, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
And maybe that would have been enough for Luke to, although I don't know. I mean, he was an adult at this point. I think he might have been very resistant to come back. So
but still, it was still Han. And I think Han would have still had that kind of effect on him, and
Now I will say this from an outside of the galaxy universe. I mean, and I'm going to preface this again. I've talked about it. I thought that I enjoyed the sequel trilogy. I enjoyed how they handled the legendary characters, Han, Leia, Luke. I know a lot of people wanted them to be more heroic and more action oriented. And I said, we already received that. We already had that in the first original trilogy. So I didn't feel like we needed that. Just would have been, rehashing or hashing out more adventures when, let's build on the universe, but I do say that I do feel in agreement with a lot of complainers that have the one disappointing thing about the trilogy was just not being able to get the core three together for anything. They were all in the first movie briefly, albeit briefly, but they never got on the Falcon or all together. And that would have been a great way to end the movie if Leia and Han both got on the Falcon with Rey and Chewie and R2 and 3PO while we're at it.
Yeah.
And they all flew out, and even throw Finn in there, he wouldn't have been injured. He would have gone with her. And they would have gone and would have seen Luke, and they would have all been standing there. Oh my God, what a great ending that would have been too. I love the ending as it was, but I just thought that would be a phenomenal way to bring everybody together. And even if the beginning of the second movie, or episode 8, was really just them standing there for a moment, and then Luke continued to throw the saber over his shoulder, and it would have been a big fight and arguing and da-da-da-da-da. In some ways, that would have been fun too. So
I agree.
And I think, but I do think it could also, twist and turn back to eventually maybe Han having to sacrifice himself, maybe having to do this thing again for Ben, but maybe at the end of Last Jedi. And that's our dark moment there. And then, redemption in the third film. Yeah. So what about you? What else you got?
Well, we're on, since we're doing sequel trilogy now, he said, I'm not a sequel trilogy. Should have brought him back to reality. Yeah, I agree. That would have been a good to have his friends being the ones to bring him back.
True, but I did like the way he did come back.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. I thought, because it was something we had never seen.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, if you're gonna expand upon the characters, you got to do so in a way that's different. And to have him do a force projection where, you know, we never saw that before, but it's not like we had seen much going on with Jedi as it was at least not in the original trilogy. So I enjoyed that, but I do like the idea of, you know, his friends being the ones to bring him back, like physically get him to come back. I mean, we got a taste of that with, you know, R2, with R2, you know, showing him the old recording of Leia. Like, I'm not coming back. Nothing could change my mind. Then he broadcast that. Like, that was a cheap move. I thought that was a nice little moment.
It was nice.
All right, so yeah, continue. My bad. Continue.
So for me, this is hard because everything that any kind of what if situation in the sequel trilogy are things that I don't know. I don't know if they're impossible to have happened the way the story was set up, but it just a lot of it just wouldn't make sense. So let's say Rey turns to the dark side.
Okay, well that you know we saw a glimpse of that, but I mean I will say this from when. Well, give me more specifics. Like, how did it happen in Rise of Skywalker? Did it happen when Kylo and Rey touched? You know, in
that could, I think that you could have that as like the beginning of it, where she accepts the invitation from Kylo after they're in the throne room thing, and
okay,
and he offers the hand.
Offers the hand.
She takes it. All
right. Of course, I'd wonder at that moment, are you taking it because you really love Kylo? Are you taking it because you want to join the dark side? Are you taking it because, you know, you're, you know, going, you know, are you taking it because of hormones? You know,
true.
I remember, I'm a high school teacher. I see wackadoodle things with kids all the time. I'm like, oh yeah.
I mean, I think at that point it's the same. I mean, it's the same. A lot of the same thing that like Palpatine. You know, any dark side user who's trying to get a new apprentice will offer. You'll offer something. You'll offer them the world. You'll offer them something that they can't have, that they don't have, that they want. And you say, "Hey, here's this thing. You know, you want the power to be able to do this? I'll give you the power to be able to do this."
Well, you know, it's funny. It's like they said, like it's been said that villains they're not villains in their own head.
No.
You know, villains think that they're coming up with something that they feel is justified.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes it spirals downward and downward to the point where they maybe are justifying too much. But in a way, it's just, I feel like it's okay. You know, they understand their role, they understand what they're doing, and therefore they don't see themselves as villains.
Yeah.
So
there's no scene. I don't know what show it's from, but there's that famous meme where the two German officers are looking at each other going, "Wait a minute, are we the baddies?"
Yeah, right.
Are we the bad guys? Yeah, no Imperial officers going there saying, "Wait a minute, are we the bad? Are we the villains?"
But think about this. I mean, I know we're jumping all around, but that's all right. This is the kind of episode to do that.
Yeah.
But think about when in episode 3, when Padme's talking to Anakin, and they're sitting on her couch and they're talking, and she's like, "Have you ever considered the thought that we might be on the wrong side?"
Yeah.
Like, and what's ironic is that they technically do become the wrong side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like everything was on, you know, the clones become the stormtroopers, the Republic becomes the Empire, and the Separatists
become the rebels.
And you know, not those exact Separatists, maybe not Newt Gunray or the Techno Union or the Banking Clan, but other worlds might end up becoming that. Mm-hmm. So it is interesting to see, you know, again, it's all about perspective. It's all about point of view. But yeah, I could see a dark side Rey. I could see Rey having a fight. I mean, that would have been a fun thing with like Rey fighting off. Well, you see, there was nobody else with Force sensibilities unless maybe Finn. There's always
well, I could even see an arc where Kylo still turns to the good side, where he has that encounter.
Oh, and then he ends up fighting Rey.
he ends up where, and you can have Rey, Rey saying, "You're weak. You gave in. Your weakness is showing."
And I can see, and this gets a little bit odd. Not, and again, this is something that some people would complain about, but when I saw, and again, based on what we've seen, when I saw in Rise of Skywalker the flashback with Luke training Leia, right? I'm staring at. I got Leia's lightsaber over here. I got picked up from Galaxy's Edge. Really fun. But when I saw Luke training Leia, now I know that was like 30, 40 years earlier. She had some skills, so it made it very clear that Leia was not untrained. She just was. She had stopped her training for the reasons that she gave. But I could see her coming out of that and fighting Rey alongside her son, Ben. I think that'd be pretty cool. That'd be a cool way to see that kind of thing. Now, of course, that would have been difficult to do in real life with the passing of Carrie Fisher. But still, nonetheless, I would have liked to see that. That would have been an interesting what if.
Yeah.
Let me go. We're getting low on time here. Let me jump to Mandalorian. Okay. So let's say, all right. I mean, it's a little different because we're not dealing with a whole saga. We're dealing with a kind of a simple storyline.
Yeah.
But and it kind of moved itself across. What if Grogu, Baby Yoda, Grogu, chose to stay with Din Djarin and did not want to go with Luke at the end? So I got to be honest. Like I loved the ending. I loved what they did. I like that they're moving Grogu away from the story because the name of the movie, the name of the show is The Mandalorian. It's not the Grogu show.
Yeah, it's not the Baby Yoda show.
Yeah, and it's also not the Luke Skywalker show.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a great moment, and I love that they used that moment to show Luke, and and whether that was all along the plan, well before the Luke Skywalker we got in Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, whether because so many people just complained that they never got to see Luke as a full-fledged Jedi do his thing. Well, okay, we get that, but that ship sailed, except for the fact that now we have CGI and we have motion capture and we have the ability to bring this character back to life in a new way. But it was, I think people were a little more forgiving of it because it wasn't a central character. Din Djarin's a central character. Yeah. Grogu's a central character. So they passed it on Luke came to pass it on. LOL. No way that was the plan for the show. Okay. We'll go with that. Thank you, Extra Techie. But my thought was, so Luke comes in, wants to take Baby Yoda, but maybe Baby Yoda senses, I should say, maybe Grogu senses something. Maybe Grogu senses Luke's upcoming failure that's going to happen with the temple. He doesn't want to go with him. And then decides to stay with Din Djarin a little bit longer, and we can see what happens. I'm glad this is not something that happened because, as I said, I want Grogu to be a limited, engaged character so that Din Djarin can have other adventures.
Yeah.
But at least for
I think you would just. I mean, I think you would just have another season with, them going on adventures.
Going on adventures. Yeah. Maybe I could see Ahsoka coming back and taking on the mantle of training if he even needed that. It's like the other thing is that you could do anything you want with that alien species.
Yeah, there's no indication of just what level of training Grogu had been at when Order 66 came down and he was spirited away. There's no indication. There's no indication.
You're happy. Okay, happy that Grogu is gone. I was just thinking Happy Grogu. It's like Happy Gilmore. Happy Grogu. Hello, Happy Grogu. Of course, it's either this scenario or it's got to go the way of the Force. Yeah, I mean that's another thing that Extra Techie's bringing up. Like, if Luke took Grogu, which he did, and then Luke is forming a Jedi temple, which he's going to do, and if Luke is going to, eventually have Ben Solo be in there, which he is, then you just connect the dots, and it doesn't end. It may not end too well. It may not end well for Grogu, unless. Now, the other thing to think about, though, is I'm trying to think about the timeline. So, and again, we're kind of going off tangent here, but that's fine. Mandalorian is about 5 years after Return of the Jedi, correct?
It's 5 years after Jedi, yes.
All right. So, and now put that aside. Jedi happens in how many years between Jedi and Jedi and Force Awakens? Is that like
40 years?
All right. So essentially 5 years go by, right? And so there's 35 years between Mandalorian, Luke taking Yoda, maybe 34 years. And then I guess how many years was, all right, one more piece of math here. Let's do some more math. So Force Awakens, 40 years after Return of the Jedi. How much time was it since Luke went missing when Ben destroyed the temple? Before
do they say how long?
Do they ever say what that is?
I don't know.
Extra Techie's saying 30 years.
30 years
is that 30 years between Jedi and if it was 30 years between Jedi and Force Awakens, and then it's 25 years between Mandalorian and Force Awakens, then how old is Kylo Ren? I mean, probably in his mid-20s. Yeah. So right. So then if that's the case, if Extra Techie's years line up and they're right, you're dealing with a Luke 30 between Jedi. Okay, we'll go with that. Now
he's taken 40. But maybe I think
wrong. It's 40. I think it's 40 in real life.
Yeah.
83, 93, 2013, 20. Yeah, well, not really. It's like 30.
He was born shortly after the rebellion.
Okay, which means that so Ben might even be alive at this point, or if he's not, he will be shortly. And Luke's going to take him and a dozen students, which you got to assume one of them is going to be Grogu, unless we'll see what happens in the next season. Maybe Grogu, walks away from it. Yeah, let's say so. Let's say he was 15. Yeah. So, oh boy, I don't like to think about Grogu not being there, but then again, look at. I mean, let's not get too hung up about it. When the temple, especially when it was terrible. The temple incident happened. It's getting dicey. You're right. But I think where it think about it this way, and for those who've watched the Clone Wars, the animated series Clone Wars, the introduction of Ahsoka, we talked about, was very polarizing at first, but then became a very beloved character, which was shortly followed by, oh my God, we're going to have to watch the death of Ahsoka, because she's not in Revenge of the Sith. She's not in A New Hope. She's not anywhere else. What are we going to do? She's going to be gone. She's got to go. So, and it was like people couldn't get their head wrapped around that. Which I was like, well, maybe there's another way. Maybe you don't know. There's a lot that could happen. And sure enough, Dave Filoni, did his magic and weaved his storytelling and managed to have her sort of die and then come back. And via the world between worlds or whatever, and then be present throughout all of everything, even though we didn't see her. So
the world within worlds, aka time travel, the ultimate get out of jail free card for any sci-fi franchise.
Yep.
When all else fails, time
travel. You got it. All right, but anyway, so the same could happen with Grogu. Grogu could end up anywhere, and plus it's a really big galaxy. I mean, the universe. He could end up just being a hermit. Maybe he was on the other side of Dagobah. Who knows? I mean, he just decided, or maybe he took Yoda's hut and said, "I'm good here." I know MCU literally built on time travel.
Amen, brother.
Amen is right. So some really cool discussion points. I like this. This was a great, and
this was fun.
And really, you could take from any movie to the beginning to end, or any legend story, or any canon news story. You can change one little thing from beginning to end and come up with it. So maybe we'll revisit this in the future.
Oh yeah, we definitely will. We like doing these what ifs. Well, before we go, Will, why don't you tell the fine folks out there in internet land where they can find you at?
Well, I'm always found hanging out in my collection room with my Darth Tuba Star Wars Unboxing Show channel on YouTube. You can just do a search Darth Tuba on YouTube, and you should come up with it. I have a Facebook page, Darth Tuba Star Wars Unboxing page, along with Instagram and Twitter at Darth Tuba. And you can always email me, darthtuba77@gmail.com, if you have any questions or anything you want to find out. And that's where you can find me.
All right. As for us, of course, if you want to get a hold of us, you can get a hold of us a few ways. First of all, you can email us, warofthestars1@gmail.com. And remember, we're wanting to hear your Star Wars story. So send us those emails, send us those videos, audio files, however you want to send it. We want to hear your Star Wars story. We want to tell your Star Wars story right here on War of the Stars. You can also find us on Twitter. We're at War of the Stars 1. That is the best place to get a hold of us if you want to talk with us directly. We're always on Twitter. We're always hanging out there, having fun. And yeah. As I said before, we are also part of the Red 5 Network. There it is, red5network.com. Check us out there.
I like how many War of the Stars are there if you are the first? Thank you, Extra Techie. Like War of the Stars 1.
Yeah, that
apparently
was
more than one. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/War of the Stars. And something just came up. I don't know. Why did that come up? patreon.com/War of the Stars. Or you can go to our Spreadshirt shop and get the cool merch that we got there. Right there is the link to it, and you can check it out there. Yeah. With that being said, as always, remember, this isn't just my Star Wars. This isn't just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
Tilt the spire, everyone.